Wouldn't it be more interesting to the reader to read something creative rather than something straightforward and generic? I have found in also reading hundreds and thousands of essays that more creative tends to be less likely to answer the prompt. So I would rather you be straightforward and like give me what I need than try to be creative. Hello, friends. How are we? How are we feeling tonight? Are we feeling scared, excited, hopeful, nervous, all the things? That's the season we're in, with CASPA opening being just 2 weeks away, which is very soon. I'm Savannah. I am a dermatology PA. I've been a PA now for almost 10 years. And about 9 years ago, I started the PA platform. And the PA platform was really my way of kind of doing advising. It was something I loved doing while I was in school. And it has just grown into a great platform for advocating for our profession, talking about PAs and trying to help more people find out about it. And then also helping you guys with the application process, with essays, interview prep, and all of those things. Tonight we're talking about essays. We're going to do some live edits. We have some other videos and such about what needs to be in your essay, content, all of that's on YouTube. So if you need more, like, I don't know what to do right now, I don't know where to start, you may want to go back and watch some of those, but we'll talk through some of it as we go through these essays. We have the personal statement guide. So this is a book with everything I talk about having to do with personal statements. It's on Amazon. It has some brainstorming worksheets. It has a lot of different topics going through brainstorming, editing, all of that. And then it has some examples in it as well. I think there's 10 examples, maybe more. But that's on Amazon. So if you need more help, that's one option. We also have a 2-week email course. It is free. It just comes into your inbox every day. Now would be a perfect time to get started with that. If you take about 15 to 20 minutes a day, it will get you from start to finish with the whole series, a draft of your personal statement done. I'm not going to say it'll be perfect or anything. It's going to need some editing, but it at least gets you some words on paper and something to work with. So now, again, is a perfect time with CASPA opening in 2 weeks. Ideally, your essay would be done before CASPA opens. That would be something great that you can just copy, paste, plop in there and not have to think about it. But I know it can also be a part of the application where it's easy to get hung up on it, to procrastinate, to I'll do it tomorrow, I'll do it another day. But now is the time. Today is the day to say, like, okay, this weekend I am going to sit down and work on my essay. All right, so I've pulled 3 essays from the ones submitted on our form. I have a traditional applicant, a reapplicant, and then someone who considers themselves a non-traditional applicant. So we'll go through those, talk about them. We do edit essays. So if you are at the point where you feel like you need some help with figuring out if your essay is where it needs to be, now is a good time to submit before it gets super busy. So turnaround time is about 3 to 4 days. All of our editors are practicing PAs who have been through every step of the process. I promise they won't steal your essay and submit it for themselves because they don't need to do that. But you'll get really, really great feedback. I'll show you what our feedback typically looks like. So you submit your essay and then we edit in the document typically, and then we'll send it back to you. So this is an example of one that I did. So we'll include lots of comments, constructive criticism, praise, all of the above, and help you out with really content, grammar, flow, making sure it is on track. So somebody says, how much does it cost? So essay editing is based on character. If you click on the link, you can see the different options, but personal statement is up to 5,000 characters. So if you have it under that limit, that's the one you would want to go with, the 2,500 to 5,000 character option. If you want more edited, like if you want to add in some experience details, COVID essay, which we don't know if they're going to have yet or not, so you may want to hold off on that. Supplemental essays, any of those, there are options to add more characters if you need to, or if you need a follow-up edit, we'll send you a discount code for a second edit. I wanted to mention Academy. So I've had some questions. We do not close registration for Academy. You can sign up at any time. So Pre-PA Academy, and I saw a couple of people in the chat who are in Academy, is our group coaching that we have sessions 3 to 4 times a week that you can attend live or watch the replays. We've done a ton on personal statements already, and we have a lot of live edits coming up for the people in Academy. So if you feel like you want a little more help through this application process, but you want to do it in like a group setting, you can sign up for that. Okay, this is a good question. So I'll go ahead and address this before we get into essays. This question from Travis. So I'm now on version 8 of my personal statement and second review with PA platform. At what point do we say enough is enough and just stop editing? So this is something we actually did talk about in Academy recently too, because you could edit your personal statement forever. And at some point, you're really just changing words and you're not really changing content or meaning. So if you get to the point where you're just switching words in and out and it's not really changing anything, it's time to call it. If you've had multiple people look at it and kind of say like, yeah, this is where it needs to be, and you've made the changes suggested, then you're good to go. It's time to put it away and start working on other things. So you can start working on experience details. You can start working on supplementals. So we have a library on the PA platform. It was pulled from last cycle, and we'll update it when this cycle's essays open. But it has a lot of the prompts for a lot of schools that you could look at, get an idea of what they're asking about, and get a head start on those supplementals, because they can take a while. Some of them will have 5 separate 1-page essays. It's a lot. And if you multiply that by, let's say, 10 programs, you are going to need some time to work on that. So that's something that you could start working on if you feel overwhelmed. So this is a first-time applicant. They gave us little information. So GPA 3.75, science GPA 3.65, and then waiting on GRE score. When you put your essay into CASPA, tabs do not transfer. So you cannot have a tab. So the best way to make your essay formatted for CASPA is to do a double enter in between paragraphs. I've seen people who will do just a bunch of spaces, and that just takes up way, way too much room. So from a formatting standpoint, your essay should look like this. I know we learned in 4th grade you have to have tabs before a paragraph, and for this purpose you don't. So that was a bunch of spaces. So this will change the character count some. So they all did this because it's what we're taught to do. But for CASPA purposes, you do not. The other thing I do not want you to do for CASPA is to put everything in one huge, big block of text. It makes it so hard to read and so difficult. So it needs to have breaks in between paragraphs, but you don't necessarily need the tab. Okay. So artistic yet precise are words I would use to describe both ballet and medicine. With diligent practice, ballet strings together unique and meticulous movements to paint a story. I have seen physician assistants, PAs practice in the same manner. Years of education, training, and practice come together in a moment of artistry as they diagnose and create individualized treatment plans. In fact, it was my own intense training for ballet that introduced me to medicine. During my rehabilitation of a ballet injury, I became fascinated with the science behind my injury and medical therapy. Through my exploration of different medical careers, I continue to be reaffirmed in my passion to pursue the PA profession. The ability to work in collaborative teams, transition to different specialties, and provide healthcare for patients in underserved communities have all served to solidify my desire to become a PA. So one question that I get a lot is having a theme for your essay. Like, does it need a theme? Should it have a theme? What should the theme be? That kind of stuff. And when it comes to themes, you don't really need a theme because your theme that you're given is why do you want to be a. So we do want to make sure that we're staying on topic with YPA. And so that's something I want you to pay attention to throughout this essay. The character count, yes, is 5,000 characters. So I put up here how many it was. So I think one of these is over, but this one is under character limit. Okay, so we learned something about this applicant. We learned that they did ballet or do ballet. So that's something personal that we're starting out with. And I like that. I love that they are mentioning PA here from the very beginning. That it is in the essay very early on. Sometimes I read essays that don't mention PA until the conclusion or the very end. And you really need to, at least in probably the first third of your essay, have PA mentioned. Is it necessary to do PAs before writing PA instead of physician assistant in one's paper? Yes. So for a formal essay, this is correct. The first time that you write out PA, you need to write out physician assistant completely, add the abbreviation, and then you can use the abbreviation throughout. This is still a formal essay. So we want to try to stay on track with that as much as possible, with being grammatically correct, formatting everything correctly, punctuation, language, all of that. We'll kind of see where the ballet stuff goes. I do like that this tells me an intro to medicine. So that's one thing that I'm looking for is, how did you get interested in healthcare? How did you get interested in medicine? What kind of brought you to this point? Physician assistant does not have to be capitalized. It should say observed or experienced firsthand instead of seen. Yeah, so that's a wording choice. Does it change the meaning? Not necessarily. I can get super picky about wording, and I think I will in one of these. I did a brief once over just to make sure there wasn't anything too personal I need to change or whatever, but I can get really picky with words. But this one doesn't necessarily bother me that much or stand out that much. But I do think this is very well written. From the beginning, I'm like, oh, this essay seems very well written. If the writer ends up adding anything, it needs character count help, could change during my rehabilitation of a ballet entry to through rehabilitation from a ballet entry. Yeah, so then you get into some changing of wording for character count purposes, and we'll talk about some ways to do that. Lists and shortening lists like this are a good way to do that. Taking out anything that has a double descriptor. I don't see a good example here, but I'll show you one. That's another good way to shorten your essay. So I like that it has an intro. I like that it mentions PA. Let's keep going a little bit. This starts to tell me a little bit about why they want to do PA and why they like. I wouldn't necessarily say, though, that this showed me exactly how they found the PA profession, other than this exploration of different medical careers. I would probably want to know a little bit more. Was it just through research? Then what happened? How did you confirm that? Where did you go from there to make sure that you really wanted to do this? Moving on, I found the real beauty in a ballet is in the ensemble. This ensemble, much like a healthcare team, serves to accomplish a task. I've seen this best through working as a medical assistant at a urology clinic. Okay, so we're continuing with ballet, which I'm gonna be honest, I'm not a theme girl. At this point, I would ditch the theme and make the theme just like YPA. It just gets a little repetitive. It feels kind of like a stretch. I've seen just a lot of different metaphors. So I've seen, lots of music. I've seen lots of sports compared to PA. I would much rather just hear about you wanting to become a PA and what you've done. And at this point, I'm missing a transition here. So this feels like a big jump from I did ballet, had an injury, figured out I wanted to work in medicine, explored medical careers, decided to be a PA, and then I'm working as a medical assistant at a urology clinic. How'd you get there? Why? Was this in college? Was this after college? How would I remove the theme? I would probably add a transition here. I would probably take this out. Probably instead of this, do after recovering from my injury, I continued to pursue the PA profession and learned more about the healthcare team through working as a medical assistant. I mean, that's how I would change that sentence, but I don't know their full story. So like, I don't know exactly how they got here. So I want context and I want transitions to be very smooth throughout your essay. Okay, so we're in the urology clinic as a medical assistant. Great experience. This is a traditional applicant. So yes, it needs to be chronological. It needs to be easy to follow. Remember that your essay readers, your admissions committee is reading hundreds of essays, like hundreds. Make it easy on them by giving them an easy essay to read. It's usually a page and a paragraph single spaced for 5,000 characters. What if the theme directly answers the prompt? Honestly, to me, a theme just takes up space. Your prompt is given. It's why PA. You are going to talk about collaboration. You are going to talk about stuff to do with PA, but like you don't need a recurring theme. Okay. The PA I worked closely with was treating a patient who was suffering from recurrent kidney stones. He expressed how this disease disrupted his daily life and was beginning to affect his mental health. Okay, I'm going to get picky about wording a little bit here. Right here, like this he to me sounds like it's referring to the PA and not the patient. So that's slightly confusing. I'd probably clarify that a little bit. You also can use names. So adding names can make your essay have a little bit more credibility. So like Joe, the PA Joe, or Joe the PA, whatever. And then you could use Joe throughout instead of just saying the PA. Yeah, I like taking a toll on his mental health. Multiple descriptors. If they're okay if you have to use them, but like if it's saying the same thing, then you wouldn't want to do it. Childhood stories are fine. Recent experiences are fine. None of that's not okay. It just needs to make sense. Everything in your essay should come back to, wouldn't it be more interesting to the reader to read something creative rather than something straightforward and generic? I have found in also reading hundreds and thousands of essays that more creative tends to be less likely to answer the prompt. So I would rather you be straightforward and like give me what I need than try to be creative. For the PAs, using their real name is fine. For a patient, you would use just like Mr. J or like Bob, like something just kind of generic is fine. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by questions. After ordering labs, the PA found that diet could be playing a role, and there was also a concern for chronic kidney disease. The PA was able to collaborate with a nutritionist, nephrologist, and a psychiatrist to improve the patient's physical and mental health. I also don't like was able to wording. I think it takes up too much space. So here I would say like the PA collaborated. At a follow-up visit, the patient cried as it was the first time he felt relief in weeks. As the medical assistant, I played a small role in the ensemble by sending his referrals, calling in medications, ordering labs, and following up with his progress. However, like the PA, I want to play a more influential role through diagnosing and treating patients and helping connect them to appropriate treatment and care. So I think this story overall was very well done. I think it explains what a PA does. It talks about teamwork, talks about collaboration, shows the writer's role in what it was and how they feel limited. I think it's just not in the right place. Like, I don't feel like I have enough information yet of why this person is choosing PA or wants to be PA to jump to their experience that is supporting this. So I just want a little bit more like meat in there, I guess was how I would put it. I don't know. But let's keep going. The adaptability I learned as a ballet dancer will be a crucial skill as a future PA. In ballet, it is important to adjust to the environment, the audience, and your body to perform your best. PAs not only exemplify adaptability on a day-by-day basis, but also throughout a long-term career. As a medical assistant working in a dermatology office, I have seen the PA not only serve as a healthcare provider, but also as a mentor to me, a student to the doctor, and a leader to the staff. In addition to shifting between these various roles daily, the ability to transition between different specialties and different settings demonstrates the adaptability of. After working at a urology and dermatology clinic, I learned that I not only do well with the variety, but I find it especially enjoyable. The opportunities available through being a PA for growth and knowledge in these versatile roles are what sparked my interest in the PA profession. Okay, so again, very well written. Very, very well written here. We got a little more ballet in there. So I need a transition. Why did you go from urology to dermatology? Why did that happen? What are you getting that's different out of that? So I just want to understand this transition. I want to understand some context. Was this while you were in school? Was this after school? Like, give me a little timeline stuff here. Like right now, I don't really have any of that. Also, I should have clarified, I've been told I can be like super blunt and critical and opinionated, but also that I have tone issues coming from my husband and my daughter. But sorry if I get like really into this. So yeah, I want to understand how they got into derm and why. How do I feel about the student to a doctor comment? I don't mind it. I think this is actually pretty good. I could see where an admissions person, depending on who it is, could kind of scoff at that a little bit. So I probably would, in an edit, like put a comment there that's just kind of like, be careful with this. It could come off as not being a collaborative relationship, and that's kind of what we're working towards. So I would probably comment on that a little bit. All right. One thing that bothered me, and this is again a wording thing that's just like small, is the use of the word different over and over. I would mix up the language there a little bit. The writer should tie in how changing specialties as a medical assistant relates to her reason to be a PA more. Yeah, I think that connection could definitely be there. The word that you can almost always take out. I talk about that more, but that is a way to cut characters. Words like that, very, I just did a Instagram post on this recently. That very, they're on Instagram. So we did talk about that. Should the main reason they want to be a PA or one of them be switching specialties? I think it's okay to mention. I think it's fine. And I think they've already talked up here about wanting to diagnose and treat. So I think it's okay to mention that. And I don't think this goes too far. But for me, I'm still just missing the context of like how we got here. That's really a holdup for me. Let's see. I've worked more closely with NPs. Can I still draw on examples with NPs? Yeah, you can definitely mention your time with NPs. I think if you're going to do that, you may need to clarify a little bit more like why you want to do PA instead of NP. For 13 years, I was lucky to grow up in a town with a ballet program that taught me patience, discipline, and composure through art. However, many of my peers had to drive more than an hour to be there. Similarly, medicine is also an art that is not easily accessible to everyone. Okay, I was not sure where that was going. This seems stretchy to me. Like that seems a little bit like a stretch. Okay. I witnessed on a medical service trip to Peru, cool, the significance that a patient's distance from health resources can have on their well-being. I visited a small village 8 hours from the nearest healthcare provider. While at the mobile clinic, a mother brought in her 5-year-old daughter who was experiencing speech delays, fatigue, and a painful red rash on her cheeks. The doctor diagnosed her with having a B12 deficiency and sunburn. I was shocked that the young girl's health had progressed to this point when it could have easily been prevented if she had a pediatrician to monitor her health. After gaining a new understanding of the impact distance can have on someone's health, I began working at the urology clinic, where the providers shared a passion to practice in underserved communities. I volunteered once a week to travel with the PA to a medically underserved town in North Georgia to see patients. I am happy to have played a small role in giving back by driving the extra miles, but I'm excited to play a bigger role I am passionate about making the distance to quality healthcare smaller and bringing the art and science and medicine to all people. This person's doing a good job of connecting to PA here. So people are saying they mentioned a patient. Their reason for visit is that generally not an issue. Yeah, that's not an issue. Unless you're saying like Joe Brown, who lives in Augusta, Georgia, like that's not breaking any rules, especially if you're not mentioning names or anything. It's just general. So that's totally fine. So this sounds like a cool experience. And agree, they're using these stories a lot. They also go back to talking about working at the urology clinic, which is where we started. And then we went to the derm clinic and now we're back to the urology clinic. And I just don't know which way we're going. I don't understand the timeline at all. So that's getting back to that whole timeline thing of understanding where and how we got here. I think the stories are good, but I do think showing more of like what the person's role was here, I think somebody mentioned not expanding on the experiences, like what you took away from them. Like some of this would just be in experience details when you talk about the experience on your application too. And you can always expand on stuff in your supplementals as well. But I do think we could understand more about why the person wants to specifically pursue PA. Do we need to put physician assistant or associate? I still say do a physician assistant until every state or school that you're applying to has switched to associate. It just depends on who's reading your essay. Some people that really, really advocate for associate may like that. Some people may not. But the name of our profession currently is still physician assistant until it's legally changed everywhere. So it's like a little bit controversial. Okay, getting into this conclusion. Ballet's adaptability, teamwork, and dedication have continued to teach me valuable lessons throughout my life thus far. As a PA, I will continue to build upon these lessons and be an advocate for my patients. The PA profession in medicine continues to be a growing and expanding art form, and one I believe access for anyone is of the utmost importance. Just like a ballet dancer transitions between the acts of a performance, I'm looking forward to this next transition of attending PA school and know I have the training and skills to pursue this next dance. This is where, like, to me, the themes, like, I feel like at this point, like, I want a strong conclusion that is just focused on PA. It's well written, but I think the theme is like not adding anything to it for me. And that's me. Maybe an admissions reader loves that, but I don't feel like I've gotten every content point I'm looking for. Academics have not been addressed. I don't know what this person chose to study. I don't know if they went into college pre-PA and continued to be PA throughout, or if they switched at any point. I don't know anything about that. They have strong GPAs. They have strong competitive GPAs, and that hasn't been mentioned at all. So I would personally encourage removing the theme and then adding some more kind of personal stuff and addressing things a little bit more chronologically. That would be the biggest feedback on this essay. How do we feel? Agree? Disagree? I see like a little bit of both in the comments. Some people are on team no theme. Okay, that was a great way to put it. I feel as though I know more about how ballet has impacted her than like why PA. Yeah. So how do I suggest promoting GPA in essay? So again, I don't know this person's story, but I wouldn't want at least a mention in the conclusion of maybe throughout college, I balanced ballet and coursework and continue to excel and do well. And I feel this will translate to excellent time management in PA school. A statement like that is plenty. We'll look at the other ones and see how they do it or if they talk about academic. Okay. So getting into a reapplicant essay here, what would y'all expect to see in a reapplicant essay? So this person has an overall GPA of a 3.42, science GPA of a 3.14, going to be a third-time applicant. I received a D in a biology class that tanked my science GPA to a 2.88, reached a 3.14 after retaking classes for A's. Should academics always be mentioned? You need to keep in mind that you're applying for a position as a PA student and not yet as a PA. So part of this is just showing that you are ready and confident in your skills to be a PA student. So yes, I pretty much always think there should at least be a mention of academics. That doesn't mean it needs a whole paragraph or anything like that, but it needs something, like some kind of attention. So reapplicant, yeah, so we would want to see like what they've done since the last application submission. You could, use news stories. We don't have their old one. Anything they've improved. Okay, let's go. My interest in healthcare and medicine started at the sound of a bang from my parents' broken down bedroom door. Okay, so we're jumping in, like my interest in medicine. This is where it started. I like essays like that. As I ran to my parents' bedroom, I found my mother shaking and unconscious while my father panicked. When she seemingly came to, the first question she asked was, "Who are you guys?" Followed by, "Get out of my house." That's scary. Okay. So this period should be here. This is me getting picky, but I do recommend using Grammarly. It's like a word check, or what's that, spell check on steroids, and it'll fix a lot of like punctuation type stuff. My father's sister and I stared back at her astonished and begged her to remember us, but to no avail. As the paramedics calmly entered the house, assessed the situation, and acted accordingly based on what they've learned, I realized I wanted to have their confidence and knowledge. So this is an example here. If you're running out of space and you have stuff like this, you can take that, like pick one. Have their confidence and knowledge to be able to do the same in situations similar to the one I was put in. All this right here is pretty wordy. I would probably like change up this wording here. I realized I wanted, and you don't even need that. I wanted their confidence for something like, I would have to work with it, but something along the lines of if I found myself in those situations in the future, something along those lines. So what do we think? So it jumped right in. It uses a personal example. Based on what we talked about in the last essay, what would you say is missing from this? Anything? So the thing that I would say is missing, that you may be able to guess, is context. How old are you? Oh yeah, it doesn't mention PA either, but there's a very different response here for if you are 5 years old versus 10 years old versus 15 versus 20. So how old are you? If you don't provide the information, your reader is going to make an assumption. So I want that information in here. And yeah, there's nothing about PA here yet. So I don't know when we'll get to that. It's in the next one. It is in the next one. So it's in the next paragraph. We'll see. But yeah, like based on what they've said, so I said it, like, why not be a paramedic? You can do that. You can be a paramedic and do what they want to do. And I agree. I don't think you have to say PA here, but there would be a pretty easy tie-in to, and now that I'm pursuing PA, I feel that. Can you say at a young age? You can. That's still a little bit vague to me because that can still mean a big difference in understanding and response. With my newfound interest in healthcare and medicine, double unnecessary, I realized if I was going to become a future provider, it was important, I would say, like, to learn what made them act. So this is weird wording. Able to act in the way that resolved my mom's epileptic episode. They had training and knowledge and education to be able to do that. So I wouldn't say what made them act in the way. I would say something along the lines of like, this like whole thing needs reworked. But basically, you know, I wanted to learn, you wanted to have that education essentially. So yeah, that whole thing needs just kind of reworked. Throughout high school and my first 2 undergraduate years, I solely relied on my own knowledge to work and study independently. Okay, I solely relied on my own knowledge. That's a weird wording too. I would be like, what do you mean? What does that mean? When I felt my grades no longer reflected my high work ethic and aptitude for test taking, I begrudgingly decided it was time to find a study group. Once again, I felt I was living up to my own capabilities after becoming a more collaborative student. I realized the importance of collaboration in the medicine and healthcare field. It's like that, you don't need that. You just say like medicine or healthcare, which was further made evident to me when watching interactions between physical therapists and physicians / PA during my time as a physical therapist aide. I was able to observe the active collaboration and cooperation that enables a provider to be both capable and confident when making independent patient care decisions. So we have more doubles here, which aren't always bad, but you don't always need them either. Okay, there's some questionable things here. So we're talking about grades pretty early on, but it's super vague. And when you're vague, your reader is going to make assumptions. So did you not do well? We know that science GPA is a little bit low. There was a D in a biology class. Yeah, there's a lot of just kind of jumping around. So I would want to understand, usually if you are going to talk about bad grades, low grades, whatever, I would recommend putting in towards the end of your essay. Like talk about all the good stuff first, talk yourself up, brag on yourself, and then be like, by the way, I had this grade thing. This is what happened. I'm doing better. Not a big deal. Let's move on. So yeah, so I would want more specifics here about what they're talking about. And then down here, like, what is this? So a slash to me means like or. So, but like, I wouldn't necessarily do it like that. Like, so really this is not for a formal essay at all. That should be PAs if everything else is pluralized. It should also be, so yeah, so I need to understand some of that better. Physicians, physical therapists, none of that, like all that doesn't really need to be capitalized. If you do, it's fine. You just need to do it throughout, but you don't have to capitalize it. Let's keep going. So this is a good question. Is it safe to assume that we should write our personal statement as if the reader admissions has not yet looked at our application experience resume? Yes. Do not assume that they have looked at your application. The person who reads your essay may not even be the person who reviewed your application. They may not even have your application to look at. So give them enough context to understand what's going on. They also probably aren't going to have the time or desire to sift back through 30 pages of your application to try to figure some of this stuff out. So give them everything they need in the essay for sure. Let's keep going and just see where we end up. As an aide, although I assisted in the plans put forth by the physical therapist, yes, it should not sound like a resume. I was elated when I gained enough skill and experience to begin, can't help it, assessing a patient's capabilities when given history on a patient's injury. For tasks as simple as determining the weight that a patient can handle during rehab, through the guidance of a physical therapist, I gained the confidence to work with patients and also learned the importance of a mind and body connection. I felt this experience helped me realize the interdependent relationship a person's mental health has on their physical health and vice versa. I knew I was capable, and I look forward to the opportunity of being able to work in a greater capacity with patients as PA, as physician assistant, as a PA. Okay, this doesn't need to be capitalized. Do you see how small issues can be distracting? Like capitalization, punctuation, wordiness. It just can be distracting from what we're trying to find out in this. Let's see. If they may not review your application, should you still mention poor grades or downfalls? Yeah, I mean, this is your one chance to explain it. And so if one person reads your essay and, then it comes to a committee and the committee's saying, well, why do they have this bad semester or this, low grade? Your person who read your essay can say, oh, they explained it. This happened. They feel good about it. I don't feel worried about it. But if you never explained it, they just have to assume stuff, Yes, it should be in paragraphs. There's not like a set number or anything. Can you use native language in your essay? I need an example, but probably. Okay, so let's talk about this paragraph. This is another jump. So you're an aide, but what made you become an aide? How did you get there? Were you pursuing PA at this point? How old were you? What was your context? Some of this could be in experience details. This feels a little bit like reiterating your resume, reiterating your experience details. I still don't know why PA. I can't say yet that I feel that you have a strong understanding of the PA profession from what's been told to me. I would think that you know what physical therapists do, but I need to know more that you really know what you want to do. I wouldn't downplay any tasks during your experience. Yeah, I mean, I agree. We want to keep everything as positive as possible. What letter grade should we explain? Anything that you feel could keep you from getting an interview. So if you had some prereq grades that were a little lower, a rough semester, a bunch of withdrawals, something like that, you would probably want to explain it. How personal should you be? That's a fine line and a gray area. With explaining circumstances, explaining issue, like grade issues stuff, you just want to be as direct as possible. If you do have a circumstance you're explaining, I would just keep it super brief and to the point and not go into super detail on it, which we read those, but sometimes they can also be a little bit distracting and not give as much why PA as much as telling us what was going on in your life, but not exactly how it relates to PA as much. But that's definitely a case by case kind of situation. Okay, let's keep going. My decision to become a medical scribe has been a humbling and worthwhile experience for me. Being a medical scribe solidified that I enjoyed working in the medical field where I am able to diagnose and create treatment plans for patients. Oh, There were times where I started to gain a grasp on what the physician PA NP was thinking when making a diagnosis and treatment plan, but was amazed by the amount of additional knowledge at their disposal that they were able to apply to a situation. These instances are what make me excited to pursue the PA profession so that one day when I'm a PA, I can also pay it forward to one day cultivate future, this is wrong, PAs and other students interested in medicine. Okay, so we got some things to talk about. So how did we become a scribe? We went from a life event to being a PT aide to being, or to having grade issues to being a PT aide to being a scribe. So there's like all these jumps without transitions of how that happened. This is also a scope issue. So right, scribes do not diagnose. You have to be really careful that you're staying within your scope, or that can be a huge red flag to a program. I would have a big block of red text here of like, hey, you just need to be careful with that. You're not really diagnosing and treating. You're like seeing the provider do that. This would be a good opportunity, I think somebody mentioned, of talking, like use a specific example. The last essay, we saw a ton of specific examples. This time, we're not seeing really any specific examples. So I want to see some specific examples of you working with a PA, kind of going through what you see, what you do, to show that understanding, show that teamwork, that collaboration. That's what I'm looking for at this point. All right. During my experiences shadowing and as a medical scribe, so like random shadow mention that I don't know what you're shadowing, I feel as though I have become a more empathetic person overall. Like many other providers, they enter the field of medicine with the initial goal and desire to improve health and well-being. I've come to understand, like, are you saying you want to do that? Like this needs more or something. I've come to understand and appreciate the importance of listening. Witnessing a patient's breakdown emotionally after learning that they have gastroparesis left me in a similar situation to how I felt the night of my mother's epileptic episode. I stood there wide-eyed and in shock. I was inspired watching the physician assure the patient that he will work to the best of his ability to help. I was brought to the realization that there will be days that may seem like an average day to me, but maybe one of the worst for a patient. Through this, I've made a mindful decision to be empathetic of those that I cross paths with, not only after I step into the role of a PA, but also in my daily life. This like shows, compassion, shows their thinking, shows some of their experiences. But like, is this specific to PA? Like, could you do these things in another profession? Yeah, like you totally could. I mean, you could be a physician, you could be a nurse practitioner, you could be a nurse, you could do this in a lot of different ways. You could go back and be a paramedic because that's what it kind of sounded like at the beginning. So we need to make sure everything points to why PA and shows more of why that role. Yes, you can replace PA in this essay with MD or NP and it will be the same. And so we need more specifics as far as PA. Throughout my experiences, I've experienced, so that's redundant, the team aspect of healthcare and medicine, redundant, that have inspired me to pursue a career as a PA and lay down the foundation for the PA I want to become. My experiences shadowing solidified. I am captivated. That's all. Even with that, it's not right. But anyway, I'm captivated by the collaboration, but also the autonomy the PAs I shadowed demonstrated. That this whole wording I need to work on that. Similar to the night the paramedics saved my mother's life, they demonstrated collaboration when working to help her, and each took turns taking the lead role. So again, wordiness. Each took turns taking the lead role to ultimately lead to a better patient outcome. I look forward to taking that next step as a PA to not only satiate my desire to treat patients to the best of my ability, but to also contribute to the betterment of future patients' well-being by cultivating future PAs and medical providers who may also one day realize they're calling at the sound of a bang. So I've kind of forgotten about the beginning. I would not end on this note. I would end on your preparedness, how you feel ready to take on PA school, your confidence and all of that. What are some of the specifics that they are looking for when answering why PA? How did you find this profession? What made you interested in it? What stood out to you? What about the daily role of a PA and how they interact with patients is something you want to do? What about how they interact with physicians? You don't necessarily have to clarify PA versus NP unless you're specifically talking about NPs, because they are very similar. But if you're like, I work with NPs all the time, but I want to do PA, then I do want to understand why you're choosing PA and not NP. Let's remember that this person was a reapplicant, and that was not addressed at all in their essay. Like, I don't know what they've done since a previous cycle. I would like to say, like, maybe this was their first essay, but they say they wrote their third time applicant. So I would expect a lot more from a reapplicant essay as far as, confidence in the profession, as well as showing me what they've done. Is this helpful or not helpful or discouraging? I don't know. I don't want to be discouraging. Okay, so this is a first-time applicant. They said they were non-traditional because they graduated out of high school with an associate's degree and then graduated again around COVID, and were also a military brat, so traveled around a lot. Okay, so this is a big paragraph. I was a young little girl. So this is, okay, so we talked about this, young little girl. So what are you assuming when she says that? When she says she was a young little girl? I'm assuming 5 or 6. Like, I don't know exactly what that means. Should you specifically state since you applied what you have done? Yeah, I think that's fine to say, or like last cycle or whatever, however you want to say it. Okay, so this is what we're saying. 5 and 10, child less than 10. Okay, let's see where that goes. Who celebrated her last day in Texas with the news from my father that our family was being stationed in Germany for half a decade. Entering a new stage in life with fresh eyes and a new outlook on life will create the biggest impact on my life going forward. That's like a general statement. It seems out of place to me. I'm not really sure. Okay. This impact sparked with my mother's health worsening. Okay. Was it bad to begin with? I'm not sure. Mother began to have blurry vision with extreme weight loss and thirst. She assumed it was heavy stress of the move. I couldn't shake the feeling it was something more. I went to a local library to do research. Okay, so this is a young little girl who went to the library to do research. So I guess they're older. Like, this is where like it just gets confusing without specifics, without any context. So yeah. I asked Mom if she had any other habits that persisted. She stated she would often bite her tongue and ate ice cubes frequently. My research niched down, and I was so anxious to know I may have figured out her diagnosis. She had type 1 diabetes, and I was shocked. At first, she was surprised by my research. However, she didn't think her health was to that extreme and believed it to be stress. 2 weeks go by, and my mom passed out at work with her blood sugar levels skyrocketing and woke up in a hospital to a doctor stating she has type 1 diabetes. My mom was stunned that her daughter accurately diagnosed her symptoms with confirmation from the doctor. She later told the doctor what I did. The doctor was impressed to know that I did the research to find the cause of her symptoms. Those moments with my mom and the doctor's feedback transformed a long-term journey and passion of mine for healthcare and advocacy. Okay, the first paragraph seems a little too dense and overly specific. I would agree. I would add in before talking about your mother's symptoms, something along the lines of, while in Germany, my mother began to have blurry vision. Yeah. So this is a long intro. It's a lot of information. So this gives us some personal stuff. So you went from Texas to Germany. I get that. This doesn't add anything for me. I would take it out. All of this to me could be summed up in probably 2 to 3 sentences. Yeah. So preparing for the move, my mom began to have blurry vision and extreme weight loss and thirst. After talking about her symptoms and doing some research, I suspected she may have type 1 diabetes. It was confirmed by her doctor, and that process made me interested in doing more medicine, learning more about medicine. Advocacy does feel a little random at the end of the paragraph. I agree with that. This is an example of just like a little bit too much info and not enough focus on the writer. So I just changed the focus from I diagnosed my mom to like I found an interest in medicine. That's where I think it should shift. My introduction to health was not voluntary. Here, okay, this is another long paragraph. Let's how do I do this? End up deleting the whole thing. I was trying to do an enter. All right, let's do this. Okay, there we go. My introduction to health was not voluntary. I'd observed my mom's frequent visits to the hospitals. Let me just take that off. Hospitals. I saw how medical professionals created treatment plans. Stationed overseas, it was my first time hearing about physician assistants. PAs. This character count was, I think this one's over. Yeah, it's like 5,850. So this one's over, yeah. Stationed overseas was my first time hearing about physician assistants. I still don't really know how old you are, but cool. My mom would often say that PAs are some of the best doctors she's had over the years. They listen to my needs and understand my issues. We'll come back to that. She valued their advocacy for her help. So I guess this is where the advocacy comes in. At some appointments, I'd see how PAs provide care to my mom. Provide or provided? Keep your tense the same. That also really bothers me. Like present, past tense all needs to be consistent. I'd see how PAs provided care to my mom with open empathy and communication. It solidified my desire to be a PA and advocate for one's health. It inspired me to have a direct involvement in patient care. I envisioned myself with an interdisciplinary team giving value-based care and treatment plans to patients. I began volunteering in food banks and events for children with cognitive disorders, shadowing providers in internal family medicine. So you just have internal medicine or family medicine, and working in healthcare facilities. Doing what? That's very vague. A volunteer service that changed my perspective on healthcare was when I was a hospice patient care volunteer. So I think this seems like it's going somewhere else, so I'd probably break that up. I provided compassionate care as an advocate for terminally ill patients and giving the best end-of-life care. I provided care from the upkeep of their rooms and hygiene to often conversating one-on-one. Is that conversing? Is conversating the word? The majority of the patients had Alzheimer's and required more time and space in their care. They valued my patience and attentiveness to actively listen to them about how they were doing. Tense. I got a call from my supervisor stating that one of my patients had passed away the same week I cared for them. I learned that in the small moments you have with a patient, don't need a comma, a strong appreciation of empathy makes a difference in their quality of life mentally and physically. I was so passionate that I created an academic capstone of palliative and hospice care and ways we can further improve end-of-life care. So I guess that's something they did in school. Okay, so that's a lot. Would you recommend having a direct quote, or should we try to steer away from them? I tend to think that quotes kind of like mess up the flow and aren't usually needed. Yeah, so PAs are some of the best doctors she's had over the years. Yeah, I also would not really use this. I'd just say I observed. Yeah, so this could say providers. This could say anything else, but that's like a huge red flag. Like even if your mom said that, to put it in your essay and like imply that you agree with it, we don't want to do that. We also don't want to put PAs on a pedestal. Like we don't want to throw anybody under the bus. There are great PAs. There are terrible PAs. There are great doctors. There are terrible doctors. That's just in every profession across the board. So yes, PAs are awesome. Typically, there's another Aide. I saw. I would just want to see more of what did you see? Tell me more about that. Like instead of all of this up here, show me more of this. Show me more of what that interaction was between the PA and your mom and the doctor and all of that. That's where I need a little bit more. And there's room for that. And then we get into volunteer service. So we're mentioning patient care experience, we're mentioning personal experience, volunteer experience. A lot of that's in there, and that's good. I think we still could have more focus on PA and the person and like why they feel like it relates to them. Because again, like some of these things are things that you could do in a lot of roles and not necessarily in just a role as a PA. Okay, a pivotal moment for me. So this is implied. So you don't need to really ever say for me. Let's say a pivotal moment confirmed my passion for medicine when I worked as a patient care tech during COVID. So another role, maybe we can have another transition here. In addition to moving back home as a full-time student and taking care of my mom's weekend health. So is there more going on? Is that just still diabetes stuff? Like what's going on there? Like what's worth mentioning? Like what do we need to mention more of that? But maybe we'll get to it. And if we get to it later and it's not mentioned, it may be better to like take that out and add it later on. I feel see something about mom down here. I collaborated with physical therapists by assisting with transfers, wound care, and documentation of the patient's treatment plans. I often asked what type of infections, diseases, and disorders they treated and learned medical terminology for charting the patients. The team always helped. Okay, so if this is a job that the person is still in, then this would be the right terminology, but they said they worked, so that makes me think it was like past tense. The team always helped open communication with patients and making sure how and what they are treating for the best care. Okay, this sentence needs some work. Working inpatient, being a full-time student, and taking care of my mom. You could just say taking care of my mom. I acquired the essential skills of teamwork, time management, and communication that allowed me to balance the efficiency of the work under the pressure of the pandemic. It reflected when I wasn't working at the hospital. My mom had post-hysterectomy surgery and needed a follow-up. So I guess this would maybe be a new paragraph. She couldn't lift anything heavier than a water bottle, felt lethargic, and was still bleeding. She was worsening by the day. I drive an hour to and from the hospital, and they refused a pelvic exam and assumed she looked healthy from her outer appearance. With constant trips to urgent care and her symptoms worse, a PA did a pelvic checkup on her and emphatically notified us she wasn't fully healed. The suture never did close, and she was hemorrhaging from the inside. I experienced my mother having a near-death experience before my eyes. With resilience, I'd stayed overnights with her while completing schoolwork and participating in school organizations. The experience led me to new perspectives on patients' pain, resilience, and struggles in their health journey as I was also learning alongside them. I gained confidence in learning how to communicate with my patients, adaptability, and fast-paced changes in care plans to the patients as well. So this seems like we're getting back to like patient care tech stuff where all this was more about the patients, about the mom. So I feel like flow and like organization wise, that could be switched up a little bit. Again, I feel like all this could be shortened a lot. So medicine, all kinds of crazy stuff happens, of course. Like if y'all work in medicine, y'all know that. Like I would have so many questions as somebody in healthcare. I'm like, why doesn't her like GYN, like her surgeon see her? If it was like a hysterectomy, like her surgeon should be following up with her. So like that's just questionable. And like if she's hemorrhaging and like near death, like that happens fast. That's not like over multiple day, like worsening by the day. So like it brings up some questions, and you just have to keep in mind that your readers are medical. Like they are PAs, they are people who have medical training. And so if you're getting into a bunch of like medical stuff, sometimes you just want to make sure that you like really understand what you're talking about there. So I would just shorten a lot of this. I would combine so that we can add more about, like, I still don't really know why this person wants to do PA specifically. I don't have one pulled right now. These are the only ones I pulled. But my personal statement, which I don't think is perfect, is on the website. It's on the PA platform. And I am going to put a before and after of an essay, like after it's been edited and fixed. Yeah, and definitely like, yeah, save some of this for a supplemental for sure. Okay. These experiences enabled me to share my passion for medicine and translate resilience, a strong work ethic, and compassion. Okay. I told myself as a physician assistant, I will never allow my patients to leave my office feeling unheard and uncared for. I hope to make a difference in every patient's life through my commitment to see beyond the symptoms by attentively detailing the whole picture. My mom often reminds me of who I am and pursuing becoming a PA embodies her message that the work I do is impactful. I look forward to being able to provide even more help and care to those in need in my future career as a. So I feel like there is confidence here. I always am like a little hesitant with very definitive statements like this. Like, it's a strong statement, but I feel like sometimes that shows a little bit, like, if you've worked in medicine, I feel like you just realize that no matter how much you want patients to feel this way, like, sometimes they aren't always going to feel, this way, or like there's always going to be communication stuff that you're working on. So I'm just a little careful with that type of statement. And then again, I would keep the focus probably on the person and not their mom here. So I think this is a good start. I think they've talked about their experiences. I think they need to switch it to a little bit more about them than their mom. It's also hard for these examples, I guess, because they didn't really tell us their YPA that well. Probably the first one, like, being empathetic, like, I think it just needs to be more integrated throughout. And then if you can talk about it with what you've seen PAs do, the teamwork aspect, those are big parts of the PA profession that need to be mentioned in your essay. All right. That was a lot. I might be like losing my voice at this point, but thanks for hanging out. Thanks for sticking with me. If you're ever just looking for personal statement stuff, like, I think there's old live edits up too on YouTube. If you just look up the PA platform personal statement, they should come up, or live edit. Keep editing, keep working on your essays, but we'll be here if you need us. All right. Thanks, guys.